You should know what the European Union really is. The nations of Europe, after two catastrophic world wars, decided to pool sovereignty to avoid a fall back to the old European situation. To pool sovereignty, ladies and gentlemen, is not everyone's cup of tea. We underestimated the power of nations in the history. And we have to be aware that notwithstanding the strengthening of the European Union, our nations, our national society will have a long life. Europe is insofar in something like a transition between its past, which it's seeking to overcome, and the future it has not yet reached. So things do not always run like clockwork. They create complexity, and there are never simple solutions. And this process to come to an ever closer European Union, standing to the values, takes time. But, ladies and gentlemen, if we didn't have the European Union, we would have to invent it, and now that we have it, we have to improve it. My opinion is that the opinion of our foundation, operating in all about 60 countries of the world, that the European Union, without a confession to values, only as an open and free market, would make no geostrategical sense alone. So we come to the second question offered to this audience here, the values. Jacques Delors said once a day, no one falls in love with the common market. And he pointed out what is a sheer necessity now to the societies in the European Union to offer others an entrance and the doors that are the values. For all the disasters Europe has faced in the last century, it is also the origin of Renaissance, of humanismus, of a history that presented us at the end human rights and individual freedom. It is a history of enlightenment and emancipation. Europe has, in its historical past, the political philosophy of a civil society and human rights, which are its first prerequisite. Individuals have to be protected simply from physical and mental violence, from arbitrary arrest and torture, as well as from more and more subtle controls. Individuals have to be enabled to speak their minds and take part in the process of determining their affairs. Moreover, all individuals, without regard to their sex or race or creed, have these basic entitlements. We observe worldwide, and also in some European countries, not members of the European Union, but European countries, and you have one strong European neighbor, Russia. In a frighteningly large number of countries, people are arrested without trial, detained without a cause, and tortured. In a smaller number of countries, constitutional and legal barriers prevent people from exercising their simple human rights. In fact, though generally not in law, full civic participation is still denied to important groups, even in civil societies. Entrenched social obstacles, not constitutional ones, but social ones, in the way of effective equal rights for women and of racial, ethnic, and religious minorities. I mention that because we often have to see that a written constitution is not sufficient. that it depends on the civil quality and in the mindset in societies if they want to be free. Remember the first German democracy, the so-called Weimar Republic, created with the written constitution in 1919. But with a society, as we experienced, not willing to live to such a free constitution. Politics, whatever its partisan complexion, has to recognize those realities and to share with those others here in this room who acknowledge the realities, certain basic value orientations.
Wolfgang, just one more minute?
Yeah?
Yeah, one more minute, and then I'll open it up.
I come to the end. Peace requires relations between the powers and their alliances. Development requires joint efforts. Survival requires concerted initiatives, and prosperity requires an appreciation of market forces. That, transported to the Ukraine and the Russian conflict, brings me to the question concerning those values: what does Russia really want? To mark the end of my contribution. What does Russia really want? Will Russia develop in a new imperial power with imperial nostalgia aiming at dominating weaker neighbors? Or will it develop, as Putin in the first speeches announced, to the values I mentioned here, the same values, he said, as the Europeans would like to have? So we have to stand firmly to our values and to defend the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
Wolfgang.